Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So today, White Sky Mage on Discord sent me a pretty interesting video from a small YouTuber called Coreteks. Now you can go ahead and check his video, the links will be in the description below. If you haven't seen that yet, watch that first and then come back here. He did a really good job on this video. He's talking about basically the reason why he believes Vega 7nm will come out to consumers either later this year, maybe early next year, and the reason why he believes that it's going to compete with RTX. Now, he did a really good video. It's produced very well. I thought it was a great video, but I really don't agree with where he was going with this. Even though I was one of the first out there to say that Vega 7nm absolutely could come to consumers, and realistically it can. It's a product, AMD makes it, and if they want to sell it to you, they can. I mean, it's that simple. But will they? And does it make sense from a business perspective? But that's what we're going to talk about here today, so stick around and check it out. We already know that Navi will be coming out on 7nm sometime in 2019. This has been on AMD's roadmap, so we know that that's going to happen. That GPU lineup is designed for gaming. Vega really was never designed for gaming, and that's the reason why Vega 56 and 64 pretty much had the problems that they did. Yes, it can game, but it is not a gaming card. It's much like how Jensen described Volta. Sure, you can run graphics on it, because it's a graphics card, but that's not really what it's designed for. Vega was always primarily designed to be a compute card for workstations and servers. And Vega 20, or Vega 7nm, is the epitome of that. This card is only being designed for servers and workstations up until this point. So why would AMD suddenly change their mind? And the reason why I think a lot of people believe that they would bring this card to the consumer market is because RTX is not what people want right now. Prices are too high, and it's just not leaving a good taste in consumers' mouths right now, so they want a better alternative. But realistically, AMD is going to do what's good for AMD. It is not their job to compete with NVIDIA to lower the prices of GPUs for you. That is not the way things work. AMD is going to be charging anywhere from $2,500 on up for these brand new 7nm Vega cards. And the reason why it makes sense for them to go for that market is because they can command that price. They can make that much money off of those GPUs. There's simply no way that they can come to the consumer market and say, hey, we have this Vega 20 and we want, $2,000 for it. It's just not going to work that way, and they would be cutting off their nose to spite their face if they came out with basically the same card, just like they did with the Vega 64, and released it at like $500-ish. And meanwhile, they're trying to charge server farms and businesses like $2,000 or $3,000 for the same GPU because people will go, we'll just buy that one unless they absolutely need the certified drivers, in which case, well, they're pretty much screwed at that point. But anybody at that point who does not need the certified drivers or can get away without them will just go for the much cheaper card. And this will cut into their own profits. At the end of the day, releasing Vega 7nm to consumers, especially this year, is really, really dumb. Now, if they wanted to wait 6, maybe even 12 months after they went ahead and released it to, like I said, the server farms and businesses and all of those guys, it might make some sense because, obviously sales are going to slow up a little bit. Yields on 7nm will be much better, and then they can go ahead and sell them to consumers for less money. Of course, they would have to dump HBM entirely to make it consumer friendly as far as pricing goes. And that, again, means that they would have to redesign the chip, so it would take them an additional 6 to 12 months at the very least to get that out. And what's going to be out within 6 to 12 months? Well, Navi. We're expecting Navi within 1 year of right now. So it does not make sense to me for them to go ahead and bring this card out. Now, when I made that video earlier this year, it would have made sense if Navi was pushed off. I was figuring the very tail end of 2019. It seems like it's going to probably be more in the middle, but realistically, we don't know anything at this point. It could be even further off than that or sooner than that. I have no idea. We don't have any information. But we're expecting somewhere in the middle of 2019 at this point with all the information floating around out there. And that seems to make sense if they're going to launch new consoles next year. The technology will have to be done and production will need to be started in spring of next year. So consumer grade graphics cards based off of the same technology end of Q2, maybe Q3 next year could absolutely happen if all of that works out. So why would they go ahead and invest all this money and time into redesigning Vega for a market that it's not really designed for? It's not designed to compete against other GPUs for gaming. It's designed to compete with other GPUs for compute. And his argument there is because ray tracing is compute. Well, technically everything your computer does is compute. Why do you think they call it computer? It's computing data, and that's all that they do. And yes, you could make the argument that maybe Vega would be really good at ray tracing if it was specifically designed for it, but realistically right now, AMD is working on something to compete with RTX, but it doesn't make sense for them to go ahead and really worry about it right now. We can see that RTX is not catching on with the community. As much as people believe that ray tracing is going to be the future of gaming and graphics and all this and that, and it may very well be, right now, today, it simply doesn't matter because people aren't gaming at 4K 144. People don't have the high resolution and high details at very affordable GPU prices. People want to game at 4K and they don't want to spend more than $300 or $400 for a GPU. Till we get to that point, ray tracing is pretty much irrelevant. But as I was saying, AMD's clearly working on something to compete with RTX, but right now is clearly not the time for that. The market, like I said, they're just not interested. We want better graphics cards at lower prices. It's just that simple. If the 1080 Ti class GPU came out at $499 and a 1080 class GPU launched at $299, everybody would have been very, very happy with this launch, and they could have stripped out DLSS and RTX and all that nonsense, and everybody would have been happy with those GPUs in comparison to what we have now. So AMD's got to focus on what's important right now, today. Not the future. The future is not that important. You worry about the future when the future comes. When the software is there, then you present the hardware. You can present it to professionals. Like, I always thought it was a good idea, NVIDIA, make the Quadro cards out of Turing, but it makes no sense for the consumer lineup. I'm sure AMD will eventually do the same thing. Get it into the hands of developers 2 or 3 years later, or maybe even 2 or 3 generations later, then bring out consumer cards when it actually matters, when the software is there. But realistically, from a gaming perspective, it makes more sense for them to just focus on Navi. If they do need something more powerful, it would make sense to scale it up. Realistically, I'm expecting them to compete at least at that 1080 Ti-ish level and lower. They may be much faster. I don't know anything about Navi and how this is going to go, but just running the basic numbers on Vega 7nm could easily compete with a 1080 Ti. If Vega could compete with a 1080 Ti, I'm sure Navi will be even more advanced, more fine-tuned toward gaming, and would actually offer even better performance per watt, per dollar, and overall, I just think it's going to make more sense for them to just wait. And if that means you don't get an AMD competitor until the middle of next year, well, so be it. Like I just said, it's not up to AMD to compete with NVIDIA. AMD is out to make money, period. It doesn't matter how they do it. If that means that they make it in consoles, if that means that they make it in APUs, that's where they're going to invest their money. And if gamers, I've said this so many times on the channel, gamers do not buy AMD GPUs when they're competitive. They have to be superior in some way, shape, or form. Whether that be that they are more power efficient, whether they're more performance per watt, whether they're just the most powerful GPU out there. Any which way you slice it, they need to have at least one of those ingredients, and if they can have 1 or 2 of them, much like the R9 290, which absolutely destroyed the GTX 700 series. It was only $399, kicked the shit out of the GTX 780, competed with the GTX 780 Ti, and cost $250 less. I mean, that thing was an absolute monster. They hit 2 of the 3 there. It obviously was not power efficient, and it ran very, very hot and loud. But because of how powerful and how good the price was, people were actually very impressed with that card. Obviously, just putting a better cooler on there would have helped out a lot, but I digress. But that's really where they need to focus. Bringing out a compute card that's designed for workstations and servers for consumers, again, like they did last year. It did not work out with Vega originally. The card was never really designed for gaming, and that's the reason why I believe that Vega had such a bad launch. So coming out with it against Turing makes no sense. I mentioned that in this video right here. You guys can check that out. Basically, NVIDIA is their own worst enemy right now. AMD doesn't need to do anything. Just let people get as frustrated as possible with them, as fed up as possible with them. Keep generating all this free hype. I mean, this guy's video is doing very, very well. It's definitely the biggest video on his channel. From what I can see, most of his videos only get like 50 or 100 views. This is up to several thousand, I think 20, 30,000. He's doing very, very well for himself. It was a very well-made video, but realistically, temper your expectations. I would not expect a Vega 7nm to come to consumers. It just doesn't make sense unless Navi is so far off that they have to put something out there as a stopgap. And even then, I still wouldn't expect this until at least Q2 next year when 7nm yields are a little bit better. Well, alrighty guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Would you want them to go ahead and put another Vega out there? Something that's not really designed for gaming, but maybe at that 1080 Ti-ish level of performance. Maybe a little bit faster, maybe in between the 2080 and 2080 Ti, maybe somewhere in that range. Would you rather they do that and launch it at, I don't know, let's say $699, $799, kind of in the same price point as NVIDIA, or would you rather they actually finish developing and focus their efforts on a proper gaming card to actually compete? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. And if you guys like this kind of video, please hit that like button, please subscribe, please share with friends. That really does help me out. And that's really all I have for today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.